Hello there, good evening, and welcome to this special discussion. The recently released Global Witness Report has brought to the fore questions that have been asked continuously by many Guyanese right across the political divide in the diaspora and even politicians and political parties in the country. The issue really is, have we gotten a good deal with regards to our oil and gas industry? A number of contracts would have been signed by the coalition government, but this report has now brought out some damning facts that were missing for some time. I have with me in studio here two former members of parliament, Nigel Dharamlall and Joe Hamilton. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having us, Eddie.
I want to get your initial thoughts. I suspect that you would have read the report and you would have seen many of the things that are now coming out in the report are views expressed by both of you and the PPPC and Guyanese at large over the past years with regards to the kind of oil deal that Guyana would have received. As many say, Guyana would have received really the bitter end of the stick as a result of so many reasons. So I want to get your initial thoughts before we get into examining aspects of the report.
All right, thank you. If I were to take the first jump, I read the contract, I read the exploratory agreement, I read the production sharing agreement, I read the Global Witness Report. And in the Global Witness Report particularly, whilst we were exposing the egregious contents of the contract that the APNU+AFC government signed, I think the Global Witness Report has validated all that has been said publicly, all that has been published, and all that has been made aware that the contracts that this current regime signed regarding our oil sector, that those contracts are at the expense of the people of Guyana rather than to the benefit of the people of Guyana. We have seen in the report strong evidence of corruption. We have seen shocking behavior of Trotman, who has responsibility for the sector at the time of the signing of the contracts. We have seen the deliberate insulation of Granger from culpability, and we have seen in no small measure the billions of dollars or tens of billions of dollars in US dollars in losses that Guyana will accrue from now to the next 40 years and beyond. So we're speaking here of 2+ generations that this government would have disingenuously treated as a result of its giveaway of national patrimony to foster its own corrupt activities and its greed for political power.
Joe.
Eddie, the thing is that everyone except the Grangenis cabal know that this contract was bad from day one. If we go back, remember this contract was signed a year and a half before it was released and made public to the Guyanese people. So we had no information about this contract. And when the contract was released, everyone was aware that the contract was a bad contract. What the report is doing is to put a lot of the things in perspective so we can get a better understanding and idea as citizens how Grangenis government did not represent our interests. I think that is a fundamental issue. And Grangenis government did not represent our interests. And some people even argue that it seems like they were more concerned with Exxon interests than the Guyanese people interests based on everything that has happened. Coming to elections not so long ago, a couple of months ago, if you recall, Trotman publicly, after denying and suggesting that the deal was a good deal. Some months ago, he said he think the deal could have been a better deal, if you recall. So he has adjusted his position on this matter. The issue is, as I would say, if Mr. Granger read this contract and approved it, I would say he's a bad leader. You know, very bad leader. And secondly, if he did not at all read the contract, as he himself has said, he's a worse leader than we really thought, because everything here would fall at Granger's foot. I see skillfully a lot of the apologists on social media, they're trying to beat up on Trotman and beat up on Greenwich, and forgetting that both Trotman and Greenwich, they work for Granger, and Granger is the overall boss of these guys. So the decisions and whatever they did and the giveaway of our patrimony is, I would say, the responsibility of David Granger. He is responsible. This dilemma we find ourselves in, based on this report, that as an expert quantify what we have lost, Eddie, that is very important moving forward. Because for us, all of us would have spoken about the bad deal. But it's the first time people who know the industry, they have quantified what we have lost. And they are saying, we lost in these negotiations 55 billion US dollars over a period of 40 years. And that is significant, and that is important.
The issue is, though, because I could recall, and I guess both of you would recall, the manner in which these contracts were signed. You had the first production sharing agreement, then you had the other agreements that were signed subsequently. First and foremost, the manner in which the first agreement was signed, and secondly, having signed an agreement, having recognized that Guyana has, you were able to confirm that there is oil, you went ahead and signed other agreements that the terms were worse than the first agreement.
Well, I think if you were to backtrack for one moment, Global Witness came to Guyana on the drive by SARA, the State Asset Recovery Authority, to, during its period of witch hunting. You recall that SARA had professed publicly that they will be investigating some of these oil blocks that were given out. What we have now found, and I think what Global Witness has now found, is the shocking revelations that this current regime actually, whilst it was witch hunting the PPP, that this current regime ended up being actually the monster. The contract that was signed, the Liza 2, for example, if you were to just go forward a little, Liza 2 was signed in June of 2016, 1.4 billion barrels. At that time, Trotman was a minister of the government. At that time too, Nigel Hughes was the chairman of the AFC. Nigel Hughes his law firm is one of the firms representing Exxon and many other resource-based companies in Guyana, and those companies are multinationals too. We also know for a fact that the address on the contract signed with Exxon is the address of Hughes, Fields and Stobie, which is the law firm of Nigel Hughes. So the contract in itself is, as they would say, a conflict of interest. So the basis of the contract is stands on illegality and illegitimacy. the government or Nigel Hughes is denying so, Trotman is denying so, but also Nigel Hughes' wife, Cathy Hughes, is also a minister, or at that time was also a minister of government, so, and a member of the cabinet. So her husband, being a representative, being the AFC chair, Trotman being the AFC leader, being the chief negotiator as minister, and we found in the report, Trotman basically acted almost on his own, without expert advice, without industry advice, and rushed through a contract on LISA 2 that basically, it can be termed as a giveaway of the national patrimony of Guyana. We have also seen in this report, and Joe is correct, based on the findings, the quantification of our losses, we would lose in the 40 years about 55 billion US dollars. But in up to 2025, we would still have to repay Exxon about 960 something.
Over $1 billion now. They're still counting.
Well, now it is counting now, so it's over $1 billion. By between 2027 to 2035, we will stand to lose about 3 billion US per year. So, and we are now in an economy that when this government inherited in 2015, we were about 1.4 billion GDP. So Guyana is in a worse off position as a result of the egregious nature of the oil contracts. We're in a worse off position because of the way the government has negotiated. We're in a worse off position because whilst the oil companies, I think they negotiated on behalf of their stakeholders, and this is not an issue about the oil company. This is an issue of the government of Guyana destroying the oil sector, destroying the future of our country by giving away those oil blocks at no benefit to the people of our country.
The thing is, and Eddie, it might be useful for us to read some paragraphs in this report for the viewers who might not have time to go read this whole 28 pages. And if you look at page 16, it says, Trotman and other officials met with Exxon at the company Texas headquarters. The trip was a glamorous affair, very glamorous affair, Trotman flew first class, slept in pricey hotels, ate at Jolie Exxon exclusive Wolfgang packed restaurant, and was chauffeured around in limousines. Exxon paid for all of that. So you understand, Trotman is not being treated here as an official of the government of Guyana. He's being treated here as one of Exxon's officials. And
Fetted as one.
Fetted as one of Exxon's officials. So it looked like from day one, Exxon assessment of the minister was that he would be useful to us more than he can be to the government that he represents. Again, it says, there is also evidence that Trotman may have disregarded certain crucial advice during the Stabroek negotiation that Guyana should not approve Exxon license until it had more information about whether it was getting a good deal. And so, this industry is new to us, to Guyana. You would think, any school child would know, the first thing dealing with a matter like this that you have no expertise in, if you're acting in the interest of the state, you will bring experts in to advise you how to proceed. But in Trotman's case, he refused expert advice and went into negotiating with Exxon without the advice that he could have gotten. And then he attempted to lie because the report is saying in the same page 60 that when they first asked him, about this trip, he denied. And he said he has to check his schedule during April. So, Eddie, if you got a trip that is so exclusive and fetid like this, I mean, you must remember it. You will remember it forever. You know?
Or maybe the bigger question would be if you went on this trip for serious purposes,
Right.
Then you would remember that even more.
Yeah, because of what this new sector means to this country as a government official. I mean, and so you have all of that is happening at the time. And as the report indicated that, listen, Trotman was hurrying and in a rush to sign this agreement. Apparently he was more in a hurry to sign than Exxon this agreement, specifically when to deal with Elisa 2. I think it's the same day the license was up or was about to be up. This phase 2 Lisa was signed by Trump.
But the thing here, because we can recall, I think we can recall Trotman saying at one point when he was asked about the contract sign, he had said that he was acting on instruction. He has never said who gave the instructions. This has led many to have the view, or led to two views out there. One where people have the position that it is pure incompetence that led to the kind of deal Guyana would have received. And the second view out there is the fact that corruption was somehow involved. Having looked at or listened to what you read just now about the trip, the wine and dine trip that you spoke about, it tends to give more weight to those arguments.
Well, in a government, in a properly run government, ministers are only instructed by the president. So naturally, despite all the insulation that Granger seems to or wants to cover himself with, Granger is ultimately responsible. The fact that he has, as Joe said, been unable to represent this country or through his minister to the benefit of the people of Guyana speaks volumes about his incompetence, speaks volumes about his indecency towards good governance, and also all of this has happened, hundreds of billions of dollars, and you cannot tell me that a president of a country has his minister overseas negotiating and the president does not know. That is utmost dishonesty. And so even while Trotman is being upbraided and he will have to face the consequences of his of what has happened, Granger is ultimately responsible, and he also must face the consequences. This is tens of billions of dollars. And whilst we put a value to the contract, we have also lost out on hundreds of billions of dollars in local content where the private sector of Guyana and the people of Guyana are directly involved in the oil and gas industry. And our position as a party is that we intend to review all of the contracts for better contract administration. We intend to review all of the contracts to ensure that the people of Guyana get the best out of what belongs to them, and that is the oil resources, the oil and gas resources. This government also, they have refused to come clean on the natural gas deposits, and natural gas is equally valuable as oil, and they have not uttered a word, or when maybe they probably is a contract out there or some document. If there isn't, then that is even worse, as you had said, if even more terrible. So that we also will have to explore, because we are speaking here, the total value in 40 years of the Exxon contract can be as much as 220 something billion, I think 223 billion just for Guyana.
US dollars.
US
we have
dollars.
we have to.
So, and then when you add the Exxon share of it, that is touching probably 400 plus billion US dollars, sorry. So, and that is only the Exxon contract. The Tullow contract is worse. The Tullow contract is 1% royalty. The Tullow contract is the government of Guyana, the people of Guyana, taxpayers, will have to front load the taxes of the contract. So all of these things we will have to review when we get into government, and we intend to do so to right the wrongs that Granger and his regime they've committed on the people of Guyana, especially in regards to the oil sector, and we intend to do so very, very quickly. Better contract administration, better negotiations, and in some cases renegotiation of many of these shocking clauses.
Before you go, Joe, I wanted to ask, because coming back to the issue of Mr. Trotman's visit, was this a different visit from the one where 5 ministers visited? Were they separate in 2017? I know Harman and a few others went, which was highly publicized. I'm not too sure if they're separate visits.
Well, it is talking about the ministers visiting, and it lay out how Trotman was treated, because he, I suspect, was the focal point in everything that was happening there. But the point is, Eddie, I suspect there might have been other visits by the minister, but of course we know about the one visit. Importantly, in all of this is this. Is righting the wrong. That's the fundamental issue here. Because what we are agreed about is that this deal is bad, and all the other deals subsequently. Whilst all of this is happening, this government is yet to put in place a legal framework to regulate the oil industry. We have no framework to deal with environmental issues, no legislation to deal with that. We have no framework to deal with the how you ensure the oil industry live up to all the things that they sign into, even the bad contracts, because you don't have the Petroleum Authority functional presently. So what we have presently here, Eddie, is just, like when they were exploring for gold in California, what they call it the Wild West. We have an oil Wild West right now because there is no regulatory framework at the level of the state. Important point also Nigel made, in some countries, their focus and money-making activity is selling natural gas, not oil. Oil is not a primary money maker for some countries in this petroleum industry. And so we have, as Nigel has said, whilst we think all of this is happening, we might have somewhere out there a contract quietly, silently dealing with how Exxon must treat with the gas. We don't know. We have heard a lot of things coming from this government about bringing gas onshore, about setting up something at Crab Island. Trotman started off saying that Crab Island had some $500 million U.S. investment was to be there. We crossed there to when we went to Albion, and Crab Island is just still Crab Island. We heard Patterson subsequently talking about bringing gas onshore to deal with the issue of energy supply. All of those are just airy-fairy conversation. But presently, there is no quantification of the natural gas that we have out there. Whilst so far we have numbers we are playing with regarding recoverable barrels of oil, we have no, for that matter, Exxon is using the gas right now in their production
For flaring
for
purposes.
flaring, and they're burning more than they really need to use. So that is money also wasted. I think somebody put a number to it. I think some $2 million a day or something like that to this flaring process. The number. So you see all around, as indicated by page 14 of the report is saying, evidence seen by Global Witness also suggests that Guyana got a bad deal because it may not have been well represented in subsequent negotiations by Minister Raphael Trotman and his team.
Before you, because I think we're almost out of time, but I want to bring out the point and get you to respond to the fact that this report that you're seeing here, when Global Witness was invited to Guyana and did its interviews and investigations, were done even before any talk about the bridging deed. We're seeing reports coming out as well that key documents are missing from the bridging deed. I don't know if you want to go first.
Yeah, well, the big issue has to do with the way the oil blocks were procured under this regime and how the contracts were negotiated. The bridging deed agreements, those are for all intents and purposes officially missing up till now. What we are seeing in the public domain are elements of the bridging deed agreements. We have also seen, and if I think Global Witness had seen those before, then we would have seen how shocking the actual contracts signed. We have recently also found out that high officials of the regime are in custody of the bridging deed agreement. We do not know also what happens when different components of each of the blocks contract would have to be given up. We have cases where I think since 2015, in the four, I think the Stabroek block, I stand corrected, ought to have been 75% of it ought to have been given up. We have cases too where Exxon bought out Kanji and Kaichor, or bought huge shares in all of them. So, and then we have the big issue of the signing bonus, where only $18 million. There's a good possibility that these guys receive much more, and Granger is fully aware of it. And I think that I would like to underscore and not to belabor that we will have to review all of these contracts. We will have to owe it to the people of this country that as soon as we get into government after the March 2nd elections, we will have to review all of these contracts to ensure that the Guyanese people get the best out of it. We will also have to make sure that the chips fall where they may, and those ministers in this regime who are responsible, they will have to be held accountable. Granger will also have to be held accountable. And I think on March 2nd is the best time for the people of Guyana to hold Granger accountable and to boot him out of office for his indecency and dishonesty.
I'll give you 1 minute, Joe, to wrap things up from your end, but it's a pity we didn't get to talk more about the role that Mr. Granger plays in all of this, because he's absolutely silent, by the way, with all of this coming out. But your final thoughts. We're heading to an election and we have already received a bad deal, which will cost us billions of US dollars. Your final thoughts and what you want
Quickly,
to do.
Eddie, the thing is that Mr. Granger is totally responsible, and the citizens must never forget that. And that's why we say to you, you have to elect the People's Progressive Party civic to government. Because Granger going back into government, all of this that we are screaming about will disappear under his government, right? And we cannot have that happen. So it is important. You asked an important question earlier, where everything is incompetence and corruption. I would say both, but I lean more on corruption because I don't think people can be that stupid. I don't think people can be that stupid. People who went to school, went to university, they will tell you and how brilliant they are and how intellectually sound they are, will tie up such agreements without not being compensated handsomely.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for being here, and our viewers, we want to thank you for joining us. Have a good rest of the evening.